I'm an idiot. Hey there YouTube, it's Bobby aka Paginator, and I'm here today with the December wrap-up and my 2020 reading stats. So, I feel like an idiot because I filmed all of my December wrap-up, which was a lot, and talked without the sound on my microphone. Why do I keep doing this? And I didn't even realize it till the battery died and I went to go plug in the cord and no microphone on. So I might go a little bit faster my second time through these just because that's usually what happens. I need to just leave the microphone switch on all the time. Use my big brain. Okay, so December was a good reading month for me. I read quite a few audiobooks. If I have a physical copy, I'll hold them up for you. If I don't, I will insert a picture. My editing program doesn't let me do picture-in-picture, which is really annoying to me because that's what everyone does on BookTube is picture-in-picture. I'll have a picture of the book right here. I have to pause, put a picture in. Blah. It's really annoying. I need new programs. So if you are also a YouTuber, tell me what's a good editing program that's also not super expensive. Okay. Also, a couple of my books I've already taken to the school because I immediately wanted to put them in the hands of my kids, or the other day I went and I was like, oh, these need to go to this school, so I just took some. I'm sorry. Alright, so now we're going to get into the books. The first one was actually on my November TBR, but I finished it the first day of December, which is Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. This book was so good that I immediately got online and ordered the next two. Of course, I haven't read them yet, but I have them, which is the point, right? I'm rolling my eyes at myself. Anyway, our main character, N, goes to the city of New Rains, which is kind of like a dystopian Las Vegas, in search of her adoptive mother. She knows that something has gone wrong because she hasn't returned and it's been a long time. And while she's there, she runs into Levi, who is he runs one of the street gangs there. And both of these two end up somehow kind of enslaved to this woman who's the villain of the book. And she's, well, there are a couple of villains, but she's fantastically villainous. Great villain. I can't really say much more than that because I don't want to spoil some things. And there are some things I still don't understand about the world, which I'm sure I'll learn as I continue to read. Next, I read Howells Moving Castle. In my December TBR, I had a prompt to read a book that had a movie adaptation and then watch the movie. And one of you let me know that the movie's much better than the book. I did read the book first anyway, and I agree with you. I liked the book. It's about a girl named Sophie Sophie, right? She is cursed by the Witch of the Waste to become an old woman because of some dumb reason, and she kind of runs off up to the waste. Anyway, there's this moving castle up there run by a wizard named Howl, and she kind of jumps on and assumes the role of his cleaner person because the castle's a mess. There is a talking fire demon who's really funny and snarky. There are some interesting characters, and yeah, it's kind of just a fun story. It's a Studio Ghibli movie. The movie was really well done. There were elements that were not in the book that were added to the movie, but I actually think that helps kind of flesh out the plot more and gives Howl more of a purpose. Chasing Lucky was an audiobook that I read by Jen Bennett. All of hers are contemporary romance, or at least all that I've read. And this one is about two kids who used to be friends, and now in their teenage years, the girl has moved back to town. She and her mom are going to kind of take over the family bookstore for a while the grandma that they don't get along with is off traveling. And the boy, Lucky, is there, and they happen to be together one night when she gets really mad and throws a rock at a window of belonging to a business of the very prominent family that kind of owns the town. And Lucky takes the blame for it. Through them kind of getting to know each other again and taking care of that whole situation, they become friends and more. Next, I read Rules for Being a Girl by Candace Bushnell and Katie Catugno. this was my first Katie Katuguno. I have a couple of books of hers that I picked up from Book Outlet back when I was ordering from Book Outlet, and I haven't ever read them, but now I want to. This book I devoured. Oh, by the way, one of you mentioned in a comment and called me Devourer of Books. I'm totally adopting that title. Thank you. But yes, I devoured this in just a couple of hours. This is a feminist book about a girl, Marin, who receives inappropriate attention from a male teacher, and no one seems to believe her when she reports it to the school officials. And she decides to start a feminist book club. She learns that some guys, actually a lot of guys, are not anti-feminist, and the one particular guy that she becomes friends with is awesome. This book I appreciated because it does give that point of view. A lot of feminist books are like, down with all men, Don't be like that. Honestly, some of the best people I know in my life are men, and there are a lot of men who fully support and women and are actually wanting to protect them from crap like that happening. Yeah. But, yeah, read this book if you, yeah. Then I picked up Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. It wasn't my cup of tea. I really wanted to like it because so many people seem to love it. But it just wasn't for me. Yeah. So I sent it to actually one of you in hopes that you'd like the book. And I don't want to say negative things about it because it could be that I was just in a weird headspace or something. After I read Rules for Being a Girl, I've been in a weird headspace since then because, okay, can I like vent to you about something? Okay. I have this pen pal. We've been pen pals for years. He lives in Germany, and shortly after Rules for Being a Girl, I sent him an email that said, you know what, I'm kind of worried about you. Every time that you write to me lately, it's all negative, and I've asked you specifically to tell me something good that's happened, even if it's something silly, and you can't do that. Is there something wrong? It's kind of hurting my feelings that you're not responding to a specific question I asked you. Can you tell me what's happening? And his reply was so mansplainy and annoying and like, ugh. I kind of want to just be done with that whole situation. I don't want to hurt his feelings, and there have been times when he's really been there for me as a friend. Granted, it's just through email, but you know, whatever. But I just don't want I don't want that much negativity. It's not good for my mental health. What should I do? Tell me what to do. Okay, back to the books. All right. Harry Potter number 4. I listened to that on audio. Let's pick up this massive thing. Okay, if you're not into Harry Potter and don't know, what are you doing with your life? But also, I'll just give you a quick synopsis. In this book, we have the Quidditch World Cup at the beginning, which was really fun. It was like the international competition of Bulgaria versus Ireland, and Harry and the Weasleys and Hermione go. We have the 4th year of Harry's time at Hogwarts, and he is accidentally or suspiciously entered into this international magical competition. There's only supposed to be one Hogwarts champion, Cedric Diggory, but somehow Harry gets picked as well. There are dragons in this book. There are weird competitions. There's drama with the friends. There's all kinds of stuff. And of course the Yule Ball where they all go to the dance. Yeah. My next read was from the school library. It was a combination of a graphic novel and a verse novel, which was interesting. Kwame Alexander and James Patterson wrote Becoming Muhammad Ali. And it is a middle grade biography of Muhammad Ali, mostly centered around his childhood, but then a little bit into his career. And I learned some things that I didn't know about him. It was pretty cool. I would recommend picking it up if it sounds interesting to you at all. Super quick read. Up next we have These Violent Delights. I got this for my book of the month choice, and then it came in 2 subscription boxes, so I have 3 copies. One's at school. I think what I'm going to do for my book of the month, maybe I'm going to choose things that I know are not young adult that still sound interesting, because I need to expand my horizons anyway. Or if it's young adult, maybe pick something that's like an add-on from their young adults add-on collection that's not like brand new. so that I don't have this happening with the 3 copies of things. Is that a good plan? I don't know. Anyway, this is a 1926 Shanghai set Romeo and Juliet retelling. It involves some historical things happening in Shanghai at the time. We have the rise of communism. We have street gangs controlling things, and Roma and Juliet, our 2 main characters, are set to inherit rival street gangs, and they have to set aside their violence and killing each other for a while and work together to defeat a monster that has come into Shanghai. And this monster has these little minion insects, and when the insects get into you, you claw your own throat out. There's lots of violence in these violent delights, but a very good read. Next, I have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This was another one that came to me through Book of the Month, but I actually listened to it on audio. It is about a girl named Addie who lives in France in the 1700s, and she does not want to die, so she makes a deal with the devil, essentially, or an evil spirit / demon, whatever you want to call him, in order to live forever. The catch is that people can't remember her after they've met. She, through her years, seeing all these things through time and stuff, have taken several lovers, and, like, of course, they don't know her in the morning. She has had relationships with men and women, but what happens when a young man remembers her? There is a love story element because of that situation, as well as a lot of dark, like, mysterious, paranormal things happening, and it's a little bit sad and heartbreaking. But well worth the read. I am not going to take this one to school because there's lots and lots of sexual stuff in here, but it's a good book. Up next, I read Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston, and this one is already at the school. It is super charming, very woodsy kind of feeling. Our main character lives in a kingdom that's near the woods, and the woods is kind of like cursed and they're not supposed to go in there. She grows up at the palace because her dad is the royal gardener, and she becomes friends with the prince, the princess, and so on. In her childhood, her mother, the prince, and the prince's guard are taken into the forest and never come back through some kind of tragic accident, and so it's just her and the princess kind of left in their friendship. And when the princess is set to be crowned queen, magical chaos kind of unleashes, and somehow she ends up with the crown, which supposedly has magic attached to it, and she's in the forest with her friend Fox, who the magical chaos has turned into a human. He's not a fox anymore, and I love him. He is probably my favorite character in the book, and there's also a very nice bear that carries them through the forest to a city where they're hoping to find help. Next, I have Next to Last Stand by Craig Johnson, which was another audiobook. And it is part of the Walt Longmire mystery series. If you have seen the Longmire shows on Netflix, it is the books that series is based on. Not every character in the series is going to be in the books. For example, Jacob Nighthorse is not in the books. Branch Connolly is not in the books, much to my sadness. There are some that are different, but I love both of them. The series and the books are set in Wyoming. I'm from Wyoming. The author's from Wyoming. I've met the author. He's lovely. Such a good storyteller, like oral storyteller, as well as a good writer. These are adult mysteries. There are sexual content and cussing in them, so I don't put them in my classroom, but they're really, really, really well done mysteries. So Next to Last Stand is the most recent one, and Walt is trying to solve a possible murder and possibly even recover a painting that was thought to be lost forever. There's some interesting things that happen with this one in terms of Walt and Victoria's relationship as well, but I don't want to get spoilery, so I better not say too much more than that. Alright, up next was a nonfiction book, Francine Prose's Reading Like a Writer. This was recommended to me by a professor I'm going to be working with next semester doing an independent study, and she suggested I read this. Where are my words today? She suggested I read this. I did. It was okay. It wasn't earth-shattering. I've been studying how to read like a writer for years and years. But there were some pieces I marked and some things that will probably stay with me. I also wrote a note in the front of this book. When I got to Utah to visit family, My mom and I took my 2 youngest nephews out delivering Christmas goodies because she likes to dress up the kids in cowboy hats with Santa hats on top of them, and they take their Christmas things around for her, and it's adorable. But anyway, we were in the car, and I said, you guys, when I'm done with, at the end of my college, I'm going to have to write a book. What should it be about? Well, the 4-year-old was giving me all different kinds of ideas, and they were taking turns giving me ideas, and then the 9-year-old, oh my gosh, he's 9. He said, I think it should be about a scientist who discovers the lost city of cows. And then the 4-year-old would suggest something, and then the 9-year-old would say, I think it should be about a scientist who discovers the lost city of cows. So I wrote down that idea in here just in case. What would the lost city of cows be like? It would have to be like a children's book, I'm sure. Lost city of cows. I'm gonna have to ponder on that for a while. But as far as this book goes, it's okay. If you haven't studied this topic, it's a great one. But just for me, it wasn't much in the way of new information. Next, I listened to Warcross by Marie Lu. I had never read that one before, and I saw it on my audiobook app that I use through the Wyoming State Library, and I listened to it, and it was fantastic. It does have Ready Player One vibes because we have this virtual world that seemingly everyone in the world plays in, but other than that, it was quite different. Our main character is a girl who accidentally glitches her way into a very prominent and public game that's being played and viewed by millions and millions of people, and because of that mistake, she is brought to Japan and hired by the game's creator, who happens to be a very young, handsome man, to kind of be a hacker slash spy for him and look for some shady things that are going on in the game, because the World Championships of the game is coming up soon, and he needs that crap taken care of. This book ends on quite a cliffhanger situation, and I really want to get to the next one. I just don't know when I'm going to have time. I need to make time, I guess. Up next, I read When the Moon Was Ours, which is something you guys picked for me. I did a video asking you to pick an LGBT read for me, and I think based on your comments, this is the one that you guys picked. Some of the comments were a little vague, like that one with witches and stuff, so I think this is the one that you guys voted for the most. Anyway, When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. This is about 2 friends, Sam, who is a transgender male, and Meal, who has the magical ability to grow roses from her wrist. Interesting. It's magical realism and therefore has some weird parts in it. We have these 4 sisters, the Bonner sisters, who are rumored to be witches, and they want Meal's roses. Meal and Sam, almost from like page 1, have a sexual relationship, and the Bonner sisters start to blackmail Meal and say, if you don't give us your roses, we're going to out Sam. Everyone's going to know he's a girl, and things are going to happen. We actually have 2 transgender characters. I won't tell you who the other one is because it's kind of a plot twisty kind of thing. And there are some lovely romantic moments in here. Sam makes these moons that he lights up for Meal to like travel between their houses, and like, I don't know. It's a sweet story, but go into it knowing that it's magical realism, and therefore there are going to be some weird things to happen. But worth your time. Alright, up next I was ready for a new audiobook, so I listened to A Court of Thorns and Roses. Of course, this book is not new to me. I've read the series or listened to it many times. I wanted to give Tamlin a fair, second chance, and he failed. Even in as I was listening to the first book, I was almost in physical pain when Feyre and Tamlin were intimate, and I wanted to slap him. If you're not familiar with this series, it started as a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but then kind of morphed into its own thing. Feyre, our main character, is a human who accidentally kills an immortal creature, and as punishment or consequence, she is brought to Tamlin's spring court in the fairy realms. He is the High Lord there, and his court has been cursed, and she goes through an awful lot to break the curse. Now, I will say the first time I read this book, and I reached the end, I liked Tamlin. I didn't ever love him. I liked him in that, he's the romantic interest. They're supposed to be together. I guess I better like him. But even through the first book, I was seeing things that I didn't like. He wasn't letting Feyre do anything, and but yet he relied on her to break his curse, and there were so many moments when he could have acted more on her behalf and didn't. So it's kind of this weird contradiction. In one way, he wasn't letting her be a part of things. Like, he'd say, no, you don't need to know about this. This is man stuff. Or, you know, he didn't probably say man stuff, but, you know, whatever. But then in other moments, he would totally let her take on all this trauma and not do anything. Yeah, anyway, as I said, the first time through, I kind of liked him because I thought I was supposed to. And then when I read the next book in the series, things changed. I then went on to listen to A Court of Mist and Fury. I will show you the back of this because it's a special edition cover, and we have our inner circle here in the Night Court. Rhysand from the Night Court. I don't want to say he rescues Feyre from the bad situation, but he gives her an opportunity to heal and helps her. He helps her with a lot of things, like how to learn to read and how to shield her mind, and they become best friends and more. I don't think I'm spoiling anything for anybody that watches this channel, because either you've read this series or you've heard enough about it that you know Feyre and Rhys end up together. Just read it. But maybe high school age or older. There's some stuff in here that's younger kids are just not ready for. I had a graphic novel that I read called Snapdragon. It's middle grade, and it is about a girl named Snapdragon who has heard about this lady who's like, she sells roadkill on eBay and like does weird things, so of course she must be a witch, right? Well, this lady helps her when her dog is hurt, and they strike up an unlikely friendship, and we actually find some really cool connections between the two characters involving some family of Snaps, and it's a cute story. Plus, it's a graphic novel, so it reads really quickly. Then Tigers Not Daughters was the next one. It was magical realism and, again, weird. We have three sisters. A year after their older sister was killed in an accident, and they're kind of just trying to get through life, but they're going about it in really the wrong ways, which is understandable because the home life they come from isn't great. The mom is gone. I can't remember if she died or like left. The dad is an alcoholic. And then two of the sisters are acting out sexually, one with like the older sister that died's ex-boyfriend, which is weird. And then the other sister like just constantly is reading or writing her own romances. So they're all just trying to cope through life and get through stuff. I really am still even now struggling with whether or not to take this one to school. What should I do? Okay, so I looked it up on Common Sense Media, which gives age recommendations, and it says 14 plus. And usually 14 plus is an age recommendation that I will allow, because even though my 8th graders are 13 and 14 and my 7th graders are 12 and 13, some of them are very well mature enough to handle older stuff. This one, I keep going back and forth in my mind. One day I'll think, okay, yes. One day I'll think, I don't know. Okay, maybe what I'll do is take it, put a YA sticker on it, and really talk seriously to anyone who wants to check it out and go, are you sure? Are you sure? Maybe that's what I'll do. All right. Next, Everything Sad is Untrue by Daniel Neri. I did have a physical copy of this, same with Tigers Not Daughters, but I took them to the school. This was middle grade, kind of fictionalized memoir. Daniel Neri, the author, and Daniel, the character, were born in Iran, spent some time in Italy as a refugee, and then came to Oklahoma. A lot of talk about cultural differences. We have bullying. We have his mom, who's in an abusive relationship with her second husband. We have lots of things about poop, which makes it perfect for middle schoolers. Yeah, lots of things about poop. Lots of stories. Throughout the book, Daniel is telling stories. He's talking directly to his teacher in some cases, to classmates, and then also recalled memory. Some of the stories are funny. Some of them are kind of heartbreaking. Some are thought-provoking. And we just get a lot of cultural perspectives mixed in with all of those things. So very well worth picking up. Very well written. Just, yeah. It's good. All right, that brings me to Burn by Patrick Ness. Can you see the smile on my face? Oh my gosh. Okay, I wanted to give this book 5 stars when I was done, but then I had to go back and think, and I think I gave it 4.5 if we want to get technical, and here's why. So at the beginning, we have our main character, Sarah, who lives on a farm in 1957 Washington with her dad. They're struggling to make ends meet. They're kind of outcasts because her dad is white, but her mom was black. Her mom has passed away from cancer, and so she's biracial. She, in 1957, is kind of on the outskirts. Well, they hire a dragon to work on their farm, and in this world, dragons are very known about, and some work for people. So they hire this blue dragon named Casimir. Casimir comes to the farm with a prophecy in mind that involves Sarah, and he's trying to help Sarah so that the world doesn't get destroyed. There's also a dragon worshipping cult, and the woman in charge of it has sent this young man, Malcolm, on a mission. Really, he's a hired assassin, but he thinks he's a hero sent to save the world, also because of the same prophecy. So we have lots of characters going on, and this is why I had to give it 4.5 stars, because there were some places where I got really confused. We also have federal agents. We have just lots of things going on. We have Jason, which is Sarah's best friend. He's Japanese American, and in 1957, again, a problem because of all the prejudices against Japanese Americans in the aftermath of World War II. And then Malcolm is gay. Again, in 1957, that's a problem. So we have these 3 teenagers who are in problematic situations with lots of prejudice against them. And then in the chapters themselves, you'd think that each chapter would be from a different character's point of view, but it's not. You'd have a chapter, and then there's a little bit of white space, and then it switches POVs, and then a little bit of white space, and it switches POVs. And it takes a while to get used to that. So I actually made a character list for my kids, like these are the characters you need to know to get started, just because I started the first 5 chapters and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this book. But once I got into it and realized the characters got a stronger hold on them, I really, really loved it. And by the end, I was like, oh, I love this book so much. It does have dragons. It also has parallel universes. Interesting. There's kind of a funny note about in one of the universes, Aaron Burr was president. It's kind of silly. But anyway, yeah, very highly recommend this book. Be careful with the characters. Just, make yourself a little list or something as you start to read it. All right, we've got 3 more books to talk about, and then I'm going to go into my stats for 2020. So They Went Left is a book that I bought in my recent giant haul at Barnes & Noble, and I actually listened to this on audio. I would recommend the audiobook. I'm sure reading it physically is great as well, same story. But anyway, They Went Left is a book that deals with Zofia and how she is coping in the aftermath of World War II. She's been liberated from a concentration camp, so we know she's been through trauma. She clearly has PTSD as we read this book. It doesn't state it outright because in those days, was that a word? Probably not. I'm sure not. But we can clearly see that she's got some stuff that she's dealing with. She's also desperately searching for her brother, Avek. They were separated and promised they would find each other if they could when everything was over. She knows her parents are dead, her grandparents, he's all she has left in the world, and she ends up at this place kind of helping people, the Jewish people out of the concentration camps find their place in the world, and of course, due to the subject matter, it's going to be very sad. There were moments I wanted to bawl. I didn't because I was busy doing stuff and driving for part of the time, but I was like, oh my gosh, I want to cry, don't cry. So just know that going into it. There are some cussing. There's one intimate scene that's not described in too much detail, so I feel okay taking this one to school for my kids. And I just really, really enjoyed this because it wasn't specifically in the concentration camp. We do get some memories of there. And it was kind of refreshing and hopeful to see what people did after that. We have a character who gets married, and she says, yeah, I know he's not the person that I was in love with earlier on, but we found each other and we can make a life together. And there's a lot of hope in this book. So there we go. Then we have a graphic novel by Chad Sell called Doodleville. Just randomly open up to one of the pages. It happens to be a chapter title. We'll do another randomly open one here. Our main character is Drew. She's part of the art club at school and she loves to doodle. She kind of spends a lot of time in her parents' diner and the customers there know her doodles. And in this world, doodles and artwork can come out of the drawings. Her doodles are always getting in trouble. The art club goes to a museum and one of the doodles steals a hat out of a classic painting. Probably not a good idea. And when the art club does this big project, the teacher's kind of disappointed in what she does, and she goes, oh, I have to do something big. I'll draw a big doodle. So she draws this large creature who they call the Leviathan, and this creature causes some trouble. It's interacting with one of the other art club characters' doodles, and she thinks that it's going to try to eat the character, so she scribbles on it to like cross it out, make it go away. But that just turns him dark, and he starts doing really mean things. He eats some other doodle characters and drawing characters, and the whole art club has to unite to deal with the Leviathan. It's a very well done graphic novel. I think if you have a kid who likes art, or an adult who likes art, or like graphic novels, I highly recommend picking that one up. My last book is How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is a short story collection set in the world of the Folk of the Air series, The Cruel Prince. This is all told from Carden's point of view. This is my beautiful, gorgeous Fairy Loot special edition. I have a dedicated video of this, which is probably going to be uploaded a few days before this one is actually, so maybe you've already seen it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this other than to say, not only is it aesthetically beautiful, it was a really fun collection of stories, and there was a story within the stories that kind of weaved them together, and it was fun. Alright, so now we're to our reading stats. We're going to start with some general stats, and then I'm going to get kind of specific on you. So, in 2020, I read 208 books, and they totaled 70,558 pages. Yeah, it was a lot. The shortest book I read was Runaways, Find Your Way Home by Rainbow Rowell and Chris Anka. And the longest book I read was Saga Compendium 1, which is all the saga that we have up to now. It was bloody fantastic, but definitely for adults. I think I've got my top 20 narrowed down. I'm really struggling to make a top 10. So if I do a top anything of 2020, it probably will be top 20 books of 2020. I don't even know if I'm going to do that video. I'm kind of like stressing right now. But anyway, the other stats I have for you come from a Google form that I keep track of books in a large number of places. I have a clipboard that I've been using for years that's like a table kind of thing that I fill out. I have my bullet journal and my Owl Crate reading journal and this Google form. I know, it's a bit much. Don't care. You can do what you want to do to track your reading or not track it. I'll do my obsessive too much tracking. But anyway, this Google forms are super handy because they'll generate like the data for you. It's awesome. So there are some things that are very me specific that I track, and one of the things is, are there dragons in this book? 9.5% of the 9.5% of the books that I read in 2020 have dragons in them. Another thing that I track is, are there pirates in this book? Sadly, only 3.5% of my books had pirates in them. Another thing that's very me specific is, would you book talk this book in your classroom? Not necessarily have you book talked it, but would you? Because I do book talks every week in my classroom. And 58% of the books that I read, I would book talk. That actually might be a little higher because I remember as I was plugging them in, sometimes I would click no, and then I would be like, oh wait, maybe I would. But anyway, 58% is still a pretty dang good number. In terms of book by genre, in my classroom, I have kind of a weird genre setup, but it's the genres I established years ago, and they're just what we have. So I'll tell you the genres that I have in my classroom, and I'll give you my top categories. So I have adventure, dystopian, fantasy fairy tale, graphic novel, historical fiction, horror, humor, mystery, nonfiction, paranormal romance, poetry, which is books in verse, but we call it poetry. I don't know why. Realistic fiction, relationships, science fiction, short stories, sports, steampunk, survival, war, western, witches and magic, which is anything that involves magic but it isn't fantasy kind of stuff. So those are my categories, and my top ones this year were witches, wizards, and magic, graphic novels, and fantasy fairy tale, which is kind of what I expected it would be. I was really trying to push graphic novels this year, and I did a good job because that's actually my top category. 19% of the books that I read were graphic novels. Relationships and realistic fiction was another two other top categories. And then there were 3 categories that I didn't read any of, which I need to step up more. One was short stories. Oh, actually, that's not true because I just read this one. So I have one short story book. Steampunk. I didn't read any steampunk this year. Or war. I guess some of the historical fiction could be classified as war, but in my classroom, the war genre is very like war specific on the fighting, the like Vietnam, World Wars 1 and 2, the Civil War. If it's like that is the main focus of it, it's a war book, and it's, as you might think, it's a very small shelf. I've got like maybe 12 war titles in there. So historical fiction, war could overlap a little bit, I suppose. Okay. Compile ratings. So as I was looking at this data, I was like, wow, a couple of things could be going on here, because 42.5% of my books I marked as 5-star reads. So that means either one of 2 things is going on. 1, I'm not a very critical reader, or 2, I'm getting better at picking out the books that I'm really going to love. I'm not sure how to feel about that. Maybe both are happening at the same time. Okay, some other things I track. Is there LGBT representation, or is the author LGBT? 16.5% of my books, that is true. I feel like I could probably do better, but also I have to be careful because in my community, they're fairly conservative, and I don't know. If I'm sharing books with kids and there are LGBT elements in them, I want them to be very clean, so that if parents have objections, I can say, look, it's just like hand holding or kissing or whatever, like, it's okay. I tracked person of color authors. So 22.5% of my books were written by POC authors. Now, some of these got marked no when I wasn't sure, and I could have taken the time to like Google them and find out, but sometimes I was just like, no, I'm tired, I just want to do this, so I clicked no. So it is possible that there could be more, but I don't know. Either way, 22.5% is, I feel like, not enough, so I need to step that up. Within that, there is a breakdown. Most of my POC authors are Asian or Black. I have lower numbers in Latinx, Middle Eastern, and Native American. And so, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I need to work on that. I did pick up a couple of Native American titles in my recent very large book haul, so that will help. I also track the gender of the main character. Mostly that's for classroom purposes, because I have some boys who are getting really tired of female main characters. So I mostly do that for them. 56% of my books this year were female main characters. 27.5% were male main characters, and then I have a both category, which was 15.5%, and so I use that if we have like 2 narrators, a boy and a girl, or if we have non-binary characters, so one of those 2 is in the both category. Page count is another thing I track, and I have categories set up by 100, increments of 100. So the largest portion of the books that I read were between 300 and 400 pages. I feel like that's pretty good. Surprisingly, 6.5% of my books were over 600 pages. Odd. Format. I track hardback, paperback, ebook, or audiobook. My largest category was hardback, 41.5%, followed closely by paperback, which was 34%, 21.5% audiobook, and only 3% ebook. I have a hard time reading on ebook. I get headaches. And then my last one is age range. I track adult, YA, and middle grade. Of course, YA is my biggest category, 64%, middle grade 21.5%, and then adult 14.5%. So I would like to step up my middle grade game. I've been trying to watch some booktube channels that are more focused on middle grade, like How to Train Your Gavin, JD Ray Reads, and Alexandra Rosalind. They're not only middle grade, but middle grade heavy, I would think of them as. So I'm gathering more information and resources about that. And then as far as adult goes, I'm okay with 14.5% there. It's just the world I live in is recommending books to kids. And someday maybe writing books for kids, so I need to stay in those genres, areas, age ranges, whatever. Okay, I just threw a lot of numbers at you. I hope that wasn't boring. So, how did you guys do with your reading this year? I mean, whatever you did is fine. Some people really struggled because of the whole pandemic thing, and some people really read a lot. Whatever you did is great. I think we should all just be proud that we made it through this year, and we're all here and still enjoying reading. So that being said, we're going to wrap up this video. I hope you have a wonderful and bookish day, and happy 2021, everyone, and happy reading. Bye-bye.